Imagine walking into a room, and without saying a single word, people immediately shift their behavior. They straighten their posture, they choose their words more carefully. They suddenly become aware that disappointing you would be a mistake they cannot afford to make. This is not intimidation. This is not aggression. This is something far more powerful. This is the ancient art of strategic presence that Sun Tzu understood better than anyone else. And today you will learn exactly how to master it, because there is one skill, just one, that separates those who command respect from those who beg for it. Those who are feared to be disappointed from those who are constantly let down. Sun Tzu said, "Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting." But what if I told you that this same principle applies to every relationship in your life? Every negotiation, every interaction where your worth is being measured. The skill I'm talking about is the ability to become strategically unreachable. Not physically absent, but emotionally and energetically unavailable to those who take you for granted. And when you master this, people will go to extraordinary lengths to avoid disappointing you, because they know that once they do, they might lose access to you forever. Think about it. Who are the people in your life that you would never dare to disappoint? Are they the ones who are always available, always understanding, always forgiving? Or are they the ones whose approval you have to earn? Whose attention feels valuable precisely because it is not guaranteed? Whose disappointment would genuinely matter because you know they would not hesitate to withdraw their presence from your life? This is the paradox that most people never understand. The more available you make yourself, the less valuable you become. The more you tolerate, the less you are respected. The more you explain yourself, the less you are believed. Sun Tzu understood that true power comes not from what you reveal, but from what you conceal. Not from what you give, but from what you withhold. Not from how much you fight, but from how little you need to. And this principle, when applied to human relationships, becomes the most devastating weapon in your psychological arsenal. Because when people cannot predict you, when they cannot take you for granted, when they genuinely fear losing your good opinion, they will move mountains to keep you satisfied. But here is where most people go wrong. They think this means being cold, distant, or cruel. They think it means playing games or manipulating others. But that is not strategic unavailability, that is just emotional immaturity. True strategic unavailability is about becoming so centered in your own worth, so clear about your boundaries, so unshakable in your standards that people naturally understand that disappointing you comes with real consequences. Not because you will punish them, but because you will simply remove yourself from the equation. You see, we live in a world where everyone is desperately trying to be liked, where people apologize for having standards, where boundaries are seen as mean and high expectations are labeled as unrealistic. But Sun Tzu would laugh at this weakness because he understood that in any relationship, whether it is war, business, or love, the person who needs the outcome less has all the power. And the moment you become too invested in maintaining a connection, you give the other person permission to treat you poorly because they know you will tolerate it. Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone truly feared disappointing you, not because you are mean or vindictive, but because they genuinely valued your respect so much that the thought of losing it was unbearable? If you cannot immediately think of several examples, then you have been too available to forgiving, too understanding, and people have learned that there are no real consequences for taking you for granted. This is why Sun Tzu emphasized the importance of positioning. He said, all warfare is based on deception, but the greatest deception is not lying to others. It is allowing others to believe that your time, energy, and respect are unlimited resources that they can access whenever they choose. Because once someone believes this, they will inevitably begin to abuse your generosity. not because they are evil, but because human nature tends to devalue what is freely given and overvalue what must be earned. So how do you become the type of person that others fear to disappoint? How do you develop this strategic presence that commands respect without saying a word? How do you make your approval so valuable that people will change their entire approach to dealing with you? The answer lies in understanding what Sun Tzu called the supreme art of war, which is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And in relationships, this means creating an environment where people police their own behavior around you because they understand the value of what they could lose. First, you must understand that your attention is your most precious commodity. Not your time, not your money, not your effort, but your focused, undivided attention. Because in a world where everyone is distracted, where everyone is scattered, where everyone is trying to be everything to everyone, genuine attention has become incredibly rare and valuable. So you must treat it as such. You must become selective about where you place your focus, who gets to occupy your mental space, and what deserves your emotional investment. When someone is speaking to you, either give them your complete attention or remove yourself from the conversation. When someone asks for your opinion, either provide a thoughtful response or clearly state that you are not available to discuss it at the moment. When someone seeks your help, either fully commit to assisting them or politely decline. This all-or-nothing approach to attention creates an immediate distinction between you and the half-present, semi-engaged majority of people they interact with daily. Sun Tzu taught that the highest form of warfare is to attack plans. And in human relationships, this means recognizing and disrupting the patterns that others use to manipulate or take advantage of you. Most people operate from predictable scripts. They know exactly which buttons to push to get you to react, to give in, to lower your standards. But when you become strategically unavailable, these scripts no longer work, and this forces people to either raise their game or remove themselves from your life. Here is what strategic unavailability looks like in practice. When someone consistently shows up late to meetings with you, you do not argue or complain. You simply reschedule once and then stop making plans with them. When someone interrupts you repeatedly, you do not raise your voice or explain why it is rude. You simply stop talking and let the silence speak for itself. When someone makes promises they do not keep, you do not lecture them about reliability. You simply stop counting on them and adjust your expectations accordingly. This approach is devastating because it removes the drama that many people use to deflect responsibility for their behavior. They cannot argue with your response because you are not engaging in an argument. They cannot manipulate you because you are not trying to change them. They cannot wear you down because you are not fighting them. You are simply adjusting your level of availability based on their demonstrated behavior, and this forces them to confront the natural consequences of their choices. But here is the crucial part. This cannot be a performance or a manipulation tactic. It must come from a genuine place of self-respect and clarity about your own worth, because people can sense authenticity. And if you are just playing games, they will eventually call your bluff. But when your unavailability comes from a real understanding of your value, when it stems from genuine standards, rather than wounded pride, it becomes absolutely magnetic, because it signals to others that you are someone worth earning access to. Sun Tzu said, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." And in this context, the enemy is not other people. It is your own desperate need to be liked, your fear of being alone, your addiction to external validation. Because these internal weaknesses are what make you available to people who do not deserve your presence. And until you conquer these aspects of yourself, you will continue to attract people who sense and exploit your neediness. The person who fears disappointing you is not someone who is afraid of your anger or your retaliation. They are someone who recognizes that you have options, that you are not dependent on their approval, that you could walk away at any moment and be perfectly fine. This recognition creates a natural tension that works in your favor, because it makes people want to earn and maintain their position in your life rather than taking it for granted. Think about the people in your life who command this type of respect. They are usually individuals who are comfortable being alone, who have strong boundaries, who do not need constant reassurance, who can say no without feeling guilty, who do not overexplain their decisions, who are not afraid of silence, who do not chase after people who are pulling away. These qualities create an aura of self-possession that others find both attractive and slightly intimidating, because it represents something most people lack: true inner stability. When you master strategic unavailability, you will notice several things happening in your relationships. First, people will start treating your time as more valuable. They will show up on time. They will prepare for conversations with you. They will think before they speak. Second, people will become more honest with you because they know you will not tolerate manipulation or half-truths. Third, people will start seeking your approval rather than assuming they have it. And fourth, the quality of people in your life will improve dramatically, because those who cannot handle your standards will remove themselves. But Sun Tzu also warned about the importance of timing. He said, "Rapidity is the essence of war." And this applies to implementing strategic unavailability. You cannot announce your new approach or explain what you are doing, because that defeats the purpose. You must simply begin behaving differently and let people figure out the new dynamic on their own. Sudden changes in availability are much more powerful than gradual ones, because they create a cognitive disruption that forces people to pay attention and adjust their behavior. However, you must be prepared for the initial resistance. You will face people who are used to having unlimited access to you, will not appreciate the change. They may accuse you of being different, cold, or distant. They may try to guilt you back into your old patterns. They may even become angry or vindictive. But this resistance is actually proof that your new approach is working, because it means you are no longer allowing yourself to be taken for granted. Remember, Sun Tzu taught that the clever combatant looks to the effect of combined energy and does not require too much from individuals. Which means you do not need to change everything at once. You can start small by being less immediately responsive to messages, by not always being the first to reach out, by declining some invitations without lengthy explanations, by allowing comfortable silences in conversations. These small adjustments will compound over time to create a completely different dynamic in your relationships. The most powerful aspect of strategic unavailability is that it is self-reinforcing. As people begin to treat you with more respect, you will naturally feel more confident and self-assured. This increased confidence will make you even more selective about who gets access to you, which will further increase your perceived value, creating an upward spiral that continues to improve the quality of your relationships and interactions. Sun Tzu said, "All warfare is based on deception, but the ultimate deception is making people believe that earning your approval is their idea." When you become strategically unavailable, people will begin to compete for your attention without being asked. They will go out of their way to impress you. They will modify their behavior to align with your standards. And they will do all of this because they have come to see your approval as something valuable rather than something guaranteed. But perhaps the most important thing to understand is that strategic unavailability is not about controlling others. It is about controlling yourself. It is about becoming so clear about your own worth that you no longer need external validation to feel complete. It is about developing such strong boundaries that people naturally understand what is and is not acceptable in their interactions with you. It is about creating such a strong sense of self that others recognize they are dealing with someone who cannot be easily manipulated or taken advantage of. When you truly master this skill, you will find that disappointment becomes rare in your life. Not because people are perfect, but because the people who remain in your orbit are those who have demonstrated that they value their connection with you enough to consistently show up at their best. The others, those who cannot or will not meet your standards, will have naturally filtered themselves out of your life, leaving you with relationships that are built on mutual respect rather than one-sided tolerance. Sun Tzu understood that the greatest victory is the one that requires no battle. And when you become the type of person that others fear to disappoint, you will find that most conflicts resolve themselves before they begin. Most disrespect stops before it starts. And most people will regulate their own behavior around you, because they understand that maintaining their position in your life requires them to show up as their best selves. This is not about being perfect yourself or expecting perfection from others. It is about creating clear consequences for poor behavior and clear rewards for good behavior. It is about teaching people how to treat you through your responses, rather than through your words. It is about becoming someone whose disappointment genuinely matters, because your approval has been earned rather than assumed. The person who has mastered strategic unavailability does not need to threaten, manipulate, or control others, because their mere presence communicates their standards. People around them understand intuitively that this is someone who has options, someone who will not tolerate disrespect, someone whose time and energy are finite resources that must be valued, and this understanding creates a natural dynamic where others take responsibility for maintaining the quality of their interactions. Remember, Sun Tzu said the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, and the supreme art of relationships is to command respect without demanding it, to inspire good behavior without enforcing it, to create loyalty without manipulating it. When you become strategically unavailable, you tap into one of the most powerful forces in human psychology, the fear of loss. And you do so not through threats or manipulation, but through the simple act of valuing yourself enough to make your presence a privilege, rather than a given right. This transformation will not happen overnight, and it will not be easy. You will be tested, you will be challenged. You will be pressured to return to your old patterns of availability and tolerance. But if you can stay committed to this new way of being, if you can resist the urge to explain yourself or justify your boundaries, if you can remain strategically unavailable to those who do not deserve your full presence, you will discover a level of respect and influence that most people never experience. But let me tell you what happens when you truly implement this strategy, when you genuinely become someone whose disappointment matters. The transformation is not just external. It is deeply internal as well, because as people begin to treat you with more respect, as they start to value your time and opinions, as they become more careful about their words and actions around you, something profound shifts within your own psychology. You begin to see yourself differently. You start to understand your true worth, and this internal shift becomes the foundation for even more powerful external changes. Sun Tzu wrote extensively about the concept of positioning, about how the strongest warriors choose their battles carefully and position themselves in such a way that victory becomes inevitable. And this same principle applies to your personal relationships. When you become strategically unavailable, you are not just changing your behavior, you are repositioning yourself in the social hierarchy. You are moving from a position of scarcity to a position of abundance, from someone who chases to someone who attracts, from someone who explains to someone who simply is. Here is what most people do not understand about human psychology. We are naturally drawn to what we cannot easily have. We value what requires effort to obtain. We respect what we might lose. And we dismiss what is always available. This is not a character flaw. This is hardwired into our brains through millions of years of evolution. The things that were scarce in our ancestral environment were usually the most valuable: food, shelter, mates, safety. So our brains developed to pay more attention to and place higher value on anything that appears limited or exclusive. When you make yourself constantly available, when you always say yes, when you never say no, when you are always understanding and forgiving, you are triggering the opposite psychological response. You are signaling abundance rather than scarcity. And abundant things, by definition, are not particularly valuable. This is why the person who is always there for everyone ends up being appreciated by no one, while the person who is selective with their availability becomes someone whose attention is genuinely treasured. The ancient Chinese strategists understood this principle deeply. They knew that mystery creates power, that distance generates desire, that the unknown commands more respect than the familiar. Sun Tzu himself was a master of this, appearing where he was not expected, disappearing when others thought they had him figured out, always maintaining an element of unpredictability that kept his enemies off balance and his allies respectful. You can apply this same strategic thinking to your everyday relationships, not through manipulation or game, but through genuine self-respect and boundary setting. When someone asks you to drop everything to help them with something that is not truly urgent, instead of immediately saying yes, you pause, you consider your own priorities, you check your energy levels, and then you give an honest response. Maybe it is yes, maybe it is not, right now, maybe it is. I can help you on Thursday, but whatever your response, it comes from a place of conscious choice rather than automatic compliance. This small shift from automatic compliance to conscious choice changes everything about how people perceive and interact with you. Because when people realize that your help is not guaranteed, that your time is not unlimited, that your patience is not infinite, they begin to approach you differently. They become more respectful of your time, more appreciative of your assistance, more careful about what they ask of you, and more mindful of how they treat you overall. But here is where it gets really interesting. Sun Tzu taught that the best victories are those where the enemy defeats themselves, and when you become strategically unavailable, this is exactly what happens. People begin to police their own behavior around you, without you having to say anything. They start to think twice before making unreasonable requests. They become more considerate in their communication. They show up more prepared for meetings. They keep their promises more consistently, all because they have learned that disappointing you has real consequences. These consequences are not punishments that you impose. They are natural results of your strategic unavailability. When someone consistently shows poor behavior, you naturally become less available to them. Not as a form of revenge, but as a form of self-preservation. You invest your time and energy where it is valued and reciprocated, and you reduce your investment where it is taken for granted or abused. This is not cruel. This is simply intelligent resource allocation. The beautiful thing about this approach is that it creates a self-selecting environment around you. People who cannot handle your standards, who do not appreciate your boundaries, who expect unlimited access to your time and energy. These people naturally filter themselves out of your life. They may leave with complaints, they may try to guilt you, they may spread rumors about how you have changed, but their departure actually improves the quality of your social environment, because it makes space for people who understand and respect your worth. Meanwhile, people who do appreciate quality relationships, who understand the value of mutual respect, who are willing to earn rather than assume access to your time and attention. These people become more attracted to you. They recognize that you are someone special, someone who has standards, someone who values themselves enough to maintain boundaries. And this recognition makes them want to be in your inner circle even more. Sun Tzu emphasized the importance of intelligence gathering, of understanding not just your enemy, but also the terrain on which you are fighting. And in the context of relationships, this means understanding the psychological terrain of the people around you, recognizing their motivations, their fears, their desires, and their patterns. Because when you understand what drives people, you can better predict how they will respond to your strategic unavailability. For example, some people are motivated primarily by fear of loss. These individuals will respond very strongly to any hint that they might lose access to you. They will quickly adjust their behavior to maintain their position in your life. Other people are motivated by challenge. They are attracted to what seems difficult to obtain. For these individuals, your unavailability becomes a form of magnetic attraction that draws them closer. Still, others are motivated by status. They want to be associated with people who are perceived as valuable or exclusive. Your strategic unavailability signals high value, which makes them want to be connected to you. Understanding these different psychological profiles allows you to calibrate your unavailability appropriately. You do not need to treat everyone the same way, but you do need to maintain consistent standards for how you allow yourself to be treated. The specific tactics may vary based on the individual and the situation, but the underlying principle remains constant. You are valuable, your time is finite, your energy is precious, and access to you is a privilege that must be earned and maintained through respectful behavior. This is not about being manipulative or playing hard to get. This is about genuine self-respect and intelligent boundary management. When you truly understand your own worth, when you genuinely value your own time and energy, when you authentically believe that you deserve to be treated well, then strategic unavailability becomes a natural expression of these beliefs rather than a calculated strategy. Sun Tzu said that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, and the supreme art of relationships is to inspire respect without demanding it, to create desire without manufacturing scarcity, to build loyalty without manipulating emotions. When your unavailability comes from a genuine place of self-worth rather than from insecurity or game playing, it becomes absolutely irresistible because it represents something rare in our world, someone who truly values themselves. Here is a practical framework for implementing strategic unavailability in your daily life. First, conduct an honest audit of your current availability patterns. Notice where you are giving too much to freely identify relationships, where you consistently give more than you receive. Recognize situations where you automatically say yes, when you should be pausing to consider. This awareness is the first step toward change. Second, begin implementing what I call graduated unavailability. Do not suddenly become unavailable to everyone all at once. This would be jarring and potentially damaging to relationships that are actually healthy. Instead, start by becoming slightly less available to those who consistently take advantage of your generosity. Respond to their messages a bit more slowly. Decline some of their requests. Suggest alternative solutions that do not require your immediate involvement. Third, practice the art of the meaningful pause. When someone makes a request of you, instead of immediately responding, take a moment to consider your own needs, energy levels, and priorities. This pause serves multiple purposes. It gives you time to make a conscious decision, rather than an automatic one. It signals to the other person that your time is valuable and not to be taken for granted. And it trains you to check in with yourself before committing to anything. Fourth, develop your ability to say no gracefully but firmly. You do not need to provide lengthy explanations or justifications for your decisions. A simple "I won't be able to do that," or "that doesn't work for me," is sufficient. The key is to say it with confidence and finality, not as if you are asking permission or seeking approval for your decision. Fifth, learn to appreciate your own company's strategic unavailability requires that you be comfortable being alone. Because if you are desperate for social contact, you will inevitably become too available to anyone who offers it. Develop hobbies, interests, and activities that you enjoy doing by yourself. Cultivate a rich inner life that does not depend on external validation or constant social stimulation. Sixth, observe and learn from people who naturally command respect. Notice how they carry themselves, how they communicate, how they handle requests for their time and attention. You will likely notice that they are selective about their commitments, thoughtful about their responses, and comfortable with silence. They do not feel compelled to fill every pause in conversation or to immediately respond to every message they receive. As you implement these strategies, you will begin to notice profound changes, not only in how others treat you, but also in how you feel about yourself. Your self-respect will grow as you demonstrate through your actions that you value yourself. Your confidence will increase as people begin to treat you with more consideration. Your energy levels will improve as you stop wasting effort on unworthy recipients. And your overall life satisfaction will rise as the quality of your relationships improves. But remember, Sun Tzu also warned about the dangers of predictability. He said that if you are strong, appear weak. If you are weak, appear strong, and this principle applies to strategic unavailability as well. You cannot become formulaic in your unavailability. You cannot create a rigid system that people can game. You must maintain an element of unpredictability that keeps others guessing about when and how you will be available. Sometimes you might be immediately responsive to someone who usually has to wait. Sometimes you might decline a request from someone who usually gets your automatic yes. Sometimes you might be more available during periods when you are typically withdrawn. This unpredictability prevents people from taking your availability for granted, while also preventing them from writing you off as completely inaccessible. The goal is to create a dynamic where people understand that your availability is neither guaranteed nor impossible. It is something that depends on various factors, including how they have been treating you, what you have going on in your own life, and what kind of request they are making. This creates a natural incentive structure where people are motivated to treat you well because they know it increases their chances of getting access to your time and attention when they need it. Sun Tzu understood that psychological warfare is often more effective than physical warfare, and strategic unavailability is a form of benevolent psychological influence that works by appealing to fundamental human drives and instincts. Rather than fighting against human nature, you are working with it, using people. Its natural tendency to value scarcity and respect boundaries to create relationships that are more balanced and fulfilling for everyone involved. The person who masters strategic unavailability does not become isolated or unliked. Instead, they become more appreciated, more respected, and more genuinely valued by the people who remain in their life. Because these people have learned that access to someone of this caliber is not something to be taken lightly, it is something to be earned, maintained, and treasured. This is the ultimate paradox of strategic unavailability. By becoming less available to everyone, you become more valuable to those who matter. By caring less about universal approval, you earn deeper respect from discerning individuals. By being willing to be disappointed by some, you become someone whom others fear to disappoint, and by mastering the ancient art of strategic withdrawal, you position yourself as someone whose presence is a gift rather than a given. The choice is yours. You can continue being available to everyone and valued by no one. Or you can become strategically unavailable and watch as people begin to fear the possibility of disappointing you. Not because you are cruel or vindictive, but because they recognize that you are someone worth keeping satisfied, someone whose respect is earned, rather than assumed, someone who has mastered the ancient art of commanding reverence without saying a word. Sun Tzu knew that the greatest battles are won before they are fought, and the greatest relationships are built on the foundation of mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. When you master the skill of strategic unavailability, you will join the ranks of those rare individuals who are genuinely feared to be disappointed. Not because people are afraid of your anger, but because they understand that your approval is valuable. Precisely because it is not guaranteed, and losing access to someone of your caliber would be a mistake they simply cannot afford to make.